What if the greatest mysteries shrouding the Christian world are not hidden beneath the gilded vaults of Rome's majestic cathedrals or in the inaccessible archives of Paris, but rather beneath the shifting tides of a quiet, almost imperceptible island, lost far out in the ocean? This speck of land is so small that many world maps might miss it. Yet for centuries, it has held whispers of rumors, conjectures, and reverent premonitions. Could Oak Island, located off the coast of Nova Scotia, be the last refuge for relics once carefully guarded by medieval Europe's most powerful and later persecuted order, the Knights Templar? This question, like an insoluble enigma, has haunted adventurers and scholars for over 2 centuries, prompting them to wonder, what exactly lies beneath the ancient layers of earth on this inconspicuous island? Imagine the scene. A person stands on the shore, feeling the salty sea breeze on their skin, while gulls cry piercingly overhead, like restless spirits forever hovering over a secret. The waters of Mahone Bay, off Oak Island, gleam with an unnatural, almost unsettling stillness, as if they too hold something unspoken, deeply hidden from prying eyes. Beneath this mirrored surface, under the dense soil of this unassuming island, perhaps lies not just a treasure, but a mystery capable of completely rewriting human history, altering our understanding of the past and influencing the future. This is not merely a search for gold or jewels that could tempt even the most powerful monarchs. This is a quest for something far stranger, far more dangerous, something that could shake the very foundations of our world. Whispers, passed down through generations, hint at a secret library here, containing forbidden gospels, texts that could challenge official doctrine. Others speak of sacred relics stolen from Jerusalem during the Crusades, perhaps even the Holy Grail itself, a chalice imbued with otherworldly power, or the legendary Ark of the Covenant, an artifact said to contain divine might. But there are those who believe the truth is even more unusual and profound. What is hidden is not a material object at all, but knowledge. Knowledge capable of revealing proof of an ancient lineage, carried through the ages, carefully protected by the Knights Templar, and buried in silence on this remote piece of land. To follow this path, one must slow down and listen to the whispers hidden between the lines of official history, tracing the subtle, almost invisible threads left by vanished orders and forgotten journeys. Threads that drift, like seaweed, just beneath the surface of the tide, awaiting discovery. Every clue found on Oak Island is fragile, every possibility enticing, and together they weave a story as much about deep faith and treacherous betrayal as it is about untold riches. The Knights Templar, founded in 1119 AD by the French nobleman Hugues de Payens and his companions, were initially guardians of Christendom. They were equally feared and revered, being both invincible warriors and skilled financiers. They marched under the banner of the Red Cross, protected pilgrims on the perilous journey to Jerusalem, and built a financial empire so powerful it threatened kings and even popes themselves. Their influence stretched from the Middle East to the farthest corners of Europe, creating a complex network of banking operations and landholdings. However, in the fateful year 1307, the world suddenly turned against them. On the night of Friday, October 13th, their leaders, including Grand Master Jacques de Molay, were arrested across France. Their order was officially dissolved, and their alleged sins, heresy, blasphemy, idolatry, and even homosexuality, were proclaimed to the world. Behind these accusations lay the self-serving interest of French King Philip IV, who was deeply in debt to the order and sought to seize their immense wealth. Yet beyond the smoke of the Inquisition's fires and public accusations lies a quieter but far more intriguing suspicion. What if their true crime was not worshipping demons or desecrating the cross, but protecting something the Catholic Church itself could not control, something that could undermine its authority? When the Templars were persecuted, many of their ships mysteriously vanished from French harbors. Historical records indicate that entire fleets, carrying unknown cargo, slipped away into the night, as if dissolving into the fog. Where did they go? Storylam. Some historians suggest their path led to Scotland, where they might have found refuge under the protection of King Robert the Bruce. Others point to Portugal, where the order was reorganized under a new name. But there is a much bolder, almost fantastic theory, which suggests that at least some of these ships sailed west, beyond the horizon, to lands only vaguely mentioned on ancient maps and in Viking tales. Could it be that they reached the shores of North America more than a century before Christopher Columbus's official discovery of the continent in 1492? And if so, could Oak Island have been their secret vault, their final refuge, where they hid their most valuable relics and knowledge? If you are fascinated by this topic and want to learn more about the most mysterious pages of history, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video. It's very important for its promotion and helps us create new content. Also, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would be very interested to know the geography of our viewers. And don't forget to watch the video until the very end, as the most important conclusions and summaries will be made in the final part. Links to our new videos can always be found in the description below this video. Let's consider the peculiar nature of this mystery unfolding on Oak Island. When three young men, Daniel McGinnis, John Smith, and Anthony Vaughan, first began digging there in 1795, they discovered not just scattered treasures, but a carefully engineered shaft, which became known as the Money Pit. This was something far more complex than a simple burial of gold. Every 10 feet, they encountered wooden platforms, layers of coconut fiber, clay, and stone, clear evidence of deliberate human construction, as if someone had methodically built downwards with a specific, extremely important purpose. It wasn't just a pit, but an elaborate architectural structure, a defense system designed to preserve something at all costs. And when water surged through what appeared to be man-made tunnels leading directly from the sea, it seemed almost like a living resistance, as if the island itself was actively fighting the intrusion, protecting its secret. Such ingenuity raises many questions. Who, centuries before modern engineering, could have created such complex flood tunnels and booby-trapped shafts on a remote island, using materials like coconut fiber, which does not grow in Nova Scotia? Few possessed such knowledge, and even fewer had such a powerful motive. And so the whispers returned to the Templars, known for their mastery in construction, shrouded in mystery, and perhaps burdened with relics too dangerous to reveal. They could very well have hidden their treasures here, far from the reach of a greedy crown or an all-powerful church. But what exactly are these treasures? This is a question that refuses to leave the minds of researchers. Was it merely gold, the untold wealth of a fallen order? which they did not want to surrender to their persecutors? Or was it something far greater, something capable of changing the very perception of human history and faith? Some researchers, relying on controversial theories, believe that the Holy Grail was not a physical cup at all, but a symbol, a bloodline, a genealogical line tracing back to Jesus Christ himself, and possessing such knowledge could undermine the foundations of Christianity. Others point to the Ark of the Covenant, which, according to biblical tradition, unleashes divine power upon those who possess it, capable of both blessing and destroying. Both would have been too dangerous to leave in Europe, too tempting for kings seeking absolute power, and too threatening for popes wishing to maintain their religious authority. Any of these artifacts or knowledge could have been the reason for such an elaborate and grandiose concealment on a distant island. And so we return to the waves, which lap with endless patience against the shores of Oak Island. They move with the rhythm of centuries, as if waiting for seekers brave enough to dig, patient enough to ask the right questions, or perhaps foolish enough to disturb what was meant to remain hidden forever. For over 200 years, treasure hunters, scholars, historians, and mere dreamers have come to this place, each convinced they are on the verge of the greatest revelation. They continue to drill, dig, and explore, driven by the hope of uncovering one of humanity's grandest mysteries, which may be hidden just a few feet beneath the surface of this unassuming island. Nevertheless, this enigmatic island persistently guards its secrets. The question arises, is it possible that Oak Island was never intended to reveal its innermost truths? Perhaps the very purpose of this mystery was to preserve it intact until a destined moment, when the world would be ready for its discovery. Or perhaps the true value lies not so much in the earth's depths, but in the wonder itself, in those numerous questions that, like expanding ripples, unite eras from medieval knights to modern adventurers, weaving together ancient artifacts with long-forgotten expeditions, unwavering faith with profound doubt. The enigma hidden beneath centuries of waves extends far beyond the mere contents of a burial. It touches upon profound questions about the true motives behind the concealment, and who precisely wished for this secret to remain undisclosed. And as one delves into the annals of Oak Island, one inevitably finds oneself on the thin line between confirmed facts and myths, between irrevocably lost evidence and the elusive whispers carried with each incoming tide. If Oak Island truly shelters the relics of the legendary Knights Templar, then beneath its ancient soil rests not only material wealth, but also the very heart of a long-forgotten chapter of human history, awaiting its moment to reassert itself. The year was 1795. Imagine a warm summer evening in picturesque Nova Scotia, the air thick with the resinous scent of pine, the melodic chirping of crickets carrying over the waters of Mahone Bay. On that very evening, 3 young men, strolling along deserted Oak Island, suddenly noticed a most unusual sight, hidden in the shadow of mighty ancient oak trees. The ground appeared clearly disturbed, as if someone had been digging there long before their arrival. And above the soil, they discovered a strange depression, resembling a shallow but clearly man-made pit. It was rumored that, according to local legends, mysterious phantom lights sometimes appeared in these parts, elusive flickering glows moving in the night, as if some entity or unseen presence continued to vigilantly guard or observe this plot of land. Naturally, the young men were seized by vivid curiosity, mustering youthful courage and yielding to the thrilling excitement of an unsolved mystery. They resolutely began to dig. What they discovered was far more complex than just an ordinary patch of ground. They had barely dug a few feet, about a meter, when their shovels struck something hard. It was stone, and beyond it, a neatly laid layer of massive logs. Beneath these logs, another layer of earth was found, and then again, wooden platforms. The entire structure was striking in its astonishing precision and thoughtfulness, as if some skilled architect had planned it many centuries prior. Each new discovery only deepened the mystery surrounding them. A logical question arose. Who could have expended such colossal effort on this remote islet, located so far from influential European powers? Their shovels, striking earth and wood, rang out, creating a peculiar echo of this enigma, a rhythm that seemed to synchronize with the growing excitement of the young explorers. However, beyond the thrill, a vague unease settled in their hearts. It became evident. This place was not a creation of nature. It looked like a meticulously designed structure, like a sturdy door crafted to reliably guard some secret. The soil was excessively dense and compacted, and the logs were laid with too strict, unnatural an order. Undoubtedly, someone had created this pit with a specific intent and purpose. Perhaps the creator wished for it to be discovered someday, or conversely, for it to remain hidden forever. As the young men delved deeper, drops of sweat ran down their faces under the scorching summer sun. Again and again, they encountered new layers of logs, positioned with striking regularity, at 10 feet, then 20 feet, and again at 30 feet. These layers seemed endless. Each was separated by a dense layer of earth, and each seemed to silently urge them to continue their investigations. It felt as if the pit itself was specifically designed to test their persistence and determination. For many generations, this mysterious structure became known as the money pit. However, even in the earliest oral traditions, people suspected that its depths concealed something far more valuable than ordinary coins or gleaming jewels. Perhaps something of a different, inestimable worth. News of the discovery spread rapidly through all the small communities scattered along the Nova Scotia coast. Tales of buried treasure passed from mouth to mouth, from one hearth to another, accompanied by mysterious whispers of fierce pirates and powerful kings. Some confidently declared it to be none other than the long-lost fortune of the infamous Captain Kidd, renowned for his privateering activities. Others suggested it might be the spoils of long-forgotten corsairs who once found refuge in these secluded, hidden coves. But the more these captivating stories multiplied, the more insistently a more troubling question arose. What if it wasn't pirates at all? What if it was the creation of some secret brotherhood, a society possessing deep knowledge of engineering, symbolism, and mysteries far older and more significant than mere gold? Even in those early days, the shaft exuded a special aura that went far beyond the simple thrill of an ordinary treasure hunt. There was a certain gravity to it, an almost supernatural sense of profound purpose. Local fishermen, recounting their observations, spoke of strange sounds that drifted over the water at night, sometimes resembling mysterious singing or the ringing of distant bells. Even ancient Mi'kmaq tales hinted that the island was unsafe, that its ancient soil held curses brought from afar, from across the boundless seas. However, the young explorers were not about to stop. With each new wooden platform they discovered, they felt an increasing certainty that they were approaching something truly monumental. For them, this pit transformed into a challenge, a complex puzzle, and simultaneously, a mysterious invitation. Yet, there was also an unspoken warning within it. For every foot they descended, the island seemed to resist with increasing force, as if silently reminding them that what was hidden here should not be disturbed by unworthy or unprepared hands. It was that summer, from a blend of curiosity and youthful courage, from earth and mysterious silence, that the legend of Oak Island was born, and once that whisper began, it became impossible to stop its spread. From humble fishing villages to the opulent halls of wealthy investors, news of the mysterious shaft spread like wildfire. Adventurers from all sides arrived on the island, armed with shovels and filled with impossible dreams, deeply convinced that they were on the verge of a grand discovery. However, Oak Island always remained a patient and vigilant guardian of its secrets. It allows only fleeting glimpses, subtle hints, and enticing promises of treasures, but never reveals the full truth. Those first, historic excavations of 1795 yielded neither gold nor any valuable relics, leaving behind only a multitude of questions. And questions, as is often the case with great mysteries, proved far more powerful and significant than any possible answers. For what lies beneath the surface of this island belongs not merely to the earth or its depths, it is part of history itself. And history, once buried, resists disclosure with all its might, guarding its secrets from prying eyes. By the early 19th century, the mystery of Oak Island was firmly entrenched in people's minds. Whispers of unusual layers hidden beneath the soil, of logs carefully laid like steps of an invisible, downward-leading staircase, spread far beyond the humble fishing communities of Nova Scotia. These tidings reached the ears of wealthy and influential individuals who craved not only adventure, but also the resounding glory of discovery. They quickly raised the necessary funds and prepared tools to continue the investigations exactly where the three young pioneers had once stopped. Thus, the first stones were laid for organized investigations in the area destined to forever be known as the Money Pit. One could vividly imagine the scene: a dozen sturdy men, their boots sinking into the damp, yielding earth, their palms calloused from the incessant handling of picks and shovels, stubbornly digging through the unyielding layers of soil. Their labor was by no means aimless or chaotic. At precisely 10-foot intervals, each of their efforts led to the discovery of the same ominous, recurring pattern: neatly laid tree trunks, resembling invisible but palpable thresholds. This was clearly not the result of random natural processes or geological anomalies. It became evident that some hand, some mind, was behind the creation of this complex underground structure. Someone, undoubtedly, wanted uninvited guests to be aware of every step taken, yet be deprived of the ability to complete their descent. As the diggers went deeper, this pit ceased to be an ordinary hole in the ground. It transformed into a descent into silence, a journey leading to the understanding of the will of unseen creators. The air below became noticeably cooler, and the sunlight gradually faded, giving way to twilight. Every creak and rustle of the ancient logs seemed to echo the suggestion that they were penetrating a carefully hidden, centuries-old design. Reaching the 90-foot mark, the shaft was deeper than any similar structure these men had ever seen. Yet, it still offered them no treasures, only multiplied the series of insoluble riddles. And then, a discovery followed that fundamentally changed the entire nature of their investigations. Through layers of earth and ancient wooden beams, the diggers extracted a flat stone, covered with very unusual, mysterious markings. The engraved symbols, though crude, bore a clear imprint of deliberateness and meaningfulness, utterly unlike any known script of that time. Many decades later, subsequent generations of researchers would claim that a message was inscribed on the stone. 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. However, what if this message was not originally intended to be so straightforward and obvious? What if the true meaning lay not in material wealth, but in the preservation of some relic, something so sacred and significant that they dared not even name it? Despite the growing mysteries, the workers steadily continued their arduous labor. With each level passed, their expectations relentlessly increased. The deeper they descended, the stronger their conviction grew that untold treasures awaited them just beyond the next layer of earth and logs. However, the island itself seemed to have entirely different, unpredictable plans. It was at a depth of 90 feet, at the very moment when excitement reached its peak, that the unexpected happened. Water began to seep through the layers of earth. At first it was just a thin stream, but soon it turned into a powerful torrent, rushing down the invisible, hidden veins of the island itself. The shaft rapidly filled with icy seawater, unstoppable and swift, as if the earth itself had awakened from a centuries-long slumber to defend its secret. This phenomenon was by no means a simple collapse of loose soil or a random geological anomaly. As later, thorough excavation showed, tunnels were discovered, deliberately laid from the bay directly to the shaft. These engineering structures were specifically designed to flood it if anyone dared to penetrate too deeply into the island's depths. This structure was no ordinary secret hideout. Before them lay a true fortress, built in the deepest secrecy, whose defensive systems were conceived with ingenuity centuries ahead of its time. Who could have been the author of such a grandiose and mysterious design? Was it pirates, driven only by greed, but lacking the necessary engineering skills? Or was it the fruit of the labor of some disciplined brotherhood, equally skilled in the art of construction and the mastery of concealment? Perhaps the very brotherhood that vanished without a trace from Europe, under the cloak of persecution in the early 14th century. People made desperate attempts to pump out the surging water. They also tried to excavate in the immediate vicinity of the main shaft. However, each such attempt invariably ended in complete failure. The island categorically refused to surrender, steadfastly holding onto its secret. The treasure seemed so close, so near, that researchers could almost feel its presence. But it was reliably protected by the sea itself. Many of those who dared to challenge the island ended up leaving it ruined, stripped of their last resources, and became objects of ridicule from neighbors who saw only reckless folly in their enterprise. Nevertheless, the mysterious allure of the shaft never faded, continuing to beckon new seekers. For in every collapse, in every defeat they suffered, the diggers felt the presence of something far more powerful than themselves, something that invisibly pressed upon their most cherished dreams and aspirations. This undertaking went far beyond an ordinary treasure hunt. It seemed they had inadvertently stumbled upon some ancient game, played long before their arrival, a game whose immutable rules were carved in the deepest secrecy, and its mysterious guardians had long since vanished from the pages of history. Even after so many years, one can vividly imagine them resting at night, by the dim, flickering light of lanterns, gazing into the gaping, dark maw of the shaft. The earth itself seemed to breathe in sync with their hearts, as if awaiting something. The men whispered quietly among themselves, asking, "What is down there? Gold, priceless relics, or perhaps something so ancient that it transcends human memory, hidden with such incredible care that even centuries of time have been powerless to reveal this secret." Thus began these excavations, and with them, the legend of Oak Island gained its own independent life. This was not just another story of buried loot, but a truly grandiose mystery, stretching across oceans and centuries, relentlessly calling to those willing to risk everything for a single glimpse of the forbidden. The first truly serious battle, unfolding between man and the mysterious island, began not with the clanging of shovels and picks, but with the sudden onslaught of water. One could vividly imagine this dramatic scene: exhausted diggers, their faces smeared with mud, their muscles aching from weeks of grueling labor, standing at the very edge of the shaft. It was at a depth of 90 feet that their hearts pounded with frantic anticipation. At any moment, they expected to hit further layers of wood and stone, which, they believed, concealed the coveted vault filled with gold, glittering gems, or perhaps something far more unusual and mysterious. But then, a sinister sound reached their ears, the slow, unsettling hiss of water beginning to seep through the earth. In just a few hours, it was no longer a harmless trickle, but a swift, surging torrent. The shaft began to fill rapidly, as if the sea itself had been summoned to swallow everything within. Pumps were immediately brought in, cumbersome, state-of-the-art machines for the early 19th century. However, no matter how diligently the men worked, the water invariably returned. It didn't matter how quickly they tried to pump it out. The shaft, it seemed, had taken on a life of its own, determined to forever drown its innermost secret. What they could not yet know was that they were fighting not just water, but an entire system of ingeniously designed flood tunnels, deliberately carved channels that directly connected the legendary money pit to the boundless ocean. Only decades later, subsequent generations of researchers discovered layers of compressed coconut fiber and seagrass in Smith's Cove. These unusual materials, foreign to the local flora, functioned as effective filters for the seawater, relentlessly drawing it into the shaft through cleverly hidden entrances. These were not natural formations or accidental accumulations. They were created with undoubted intent. The very land, this island, seemed designed with one purpose: to protect what lay within its depths. But who could have been the author of such a grand and mysterious design? Clearly, such a creation was not the work of pirates. These buccaneers, hastily stashing their loot, preferred to hide their spoils in inconspicuous caves or shallow burials, not in shafts almost 30 meters deep and protected by ingenious water traps. This was something far more sophisticated and complex. Such an engineering solution required deep knowledge of hydrology, architectural ingenuity, and engineering, centuries ahead of its time. It was these facts that led some to begin whispering the name of the legendary Knights Templar. Indeed, who else but the Templars, exiled from Europe and desperately seeking a way to hide their most sacred relics, could possess both such a powerful motive and the necessary skills to create such a vault. Their skilled builders erected impregnable fortresses in Jerusalem, numerous commanderies across Europe, and castles capable of withstanding sieges by entire armies. Could Oak Island have become their last refuge, their most secret stronghold, built not of stone towers, but of carefully hidden underground chambers? The flooding of the shaft, in this context, took on symbolic meaning. It seemed as if this treasure, whatever it might be, had a will of its own unwillingness to be discovered and appropriated. Every attempt to drain the mysterious shaft invariably ended in failure. Attempts to dig auxiliary tunnels only provoked new collapses, and water rushed in again, cold, ruthless, and unyielding. The men working on the island cursed it, but at the same time felt a deep respect, for it seemed to them not just a place, but rather a vigilant guardian. Rumors spread everywhere. The island, they said, was cursed. Some believed the water was enchanted, that the sea itself was summoned to protect ancient relics. Others saw in the tunnels the hand of some secret society that not only knew how to build such defenses, but also understood why they were absolutely necessary. Thus, the flood tunnels ceased to be mere physical obstacles. They transformed into symbols of a deeper truth. Oak Island was never meant to surrender easily. Its mystery was designed to outlast many generations. Every attempt to penetrate its heart met with stubborn resistance, as if history itself guarded its threshold. Even today, as modern machinery rumbles on the surface, this same problem remains unresolved. Pumps work non-stop. Drills penetrate deep into the earth. But the water still returns, flooding the shaft with the same relentless fidelity as 2 centuries ago. It seems as if the Templars themselves are whispering through time, "This is not for you." What if the water is not just an obstacle, but a kind of message? A reminder that what was buried here was intended for eternal keeping, not for discovery. What if the flooding is the island's way of stating that the world is not yet ready for what lies beneath? The flood tunnels awoke on that fateful day in 1804 and have not slept since. And in their endless tide, they remind us of something unsettling. Sometimes the earth itself conspires to keep its secret. As the water rose and hope seemed to drown with it, there remained one more strange discovery that continued to haunt everyone who set foot on Oak Island. At a depth of about 90 feet, before the shaft was fully submerged, diggers extracted a single stone slab from the earth, heavy, rectangular, and unusually smooth. Engraved on it were markings, mysterious symbols that none of the men could read. This stone was unlike anything ever found in Nova Scotia. Its surface was perfectly flat, as if carved by skilled hands, not polished by time. The signs engraved on it belonged to neither English, French, Mi'kmaq, nor Norse languages. It was something entirely different, intricate hieroglyphs that seemed to hint at some hidden code. Some claimed the markings were arranged in neat rows, almost like a meaningful sentence. Others swore they saw crosses woven into a complex pattern. The slab was lifted and later displayed above a fireplace in a local home, where it became the subject of endless speculation and conjecture. Over time, one supposed translation emerged. 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. This was an extremely tempting promise that fueled Oak Island fever for generations. However, many now suspect that this translation was never genuine, After all, why would someone so carefully bury a treasure, only to leave a plaque announcing its value? Perhaps the markings were never intended to be read by outsiders. Perhaps it was a complex cipher, a warning, or even a ritual seal designed to securely guard the vault. Some researchers noted that the symbols resembled codes used by early Freemasons, who themselves, at least according to legend, were heirs to Templar secrets. Could it be that the stone was not a clue, but rather a barrier, a marker that said, "Something sacred lies here. Touch at your peril"? Imagine those diggers, huddled around a fire, gazing at the stone as shadows danced across its surface. The symbols seemed alive in the flickering light, whispering to them of mysteries beyond their grasp. Did they wonder if they had stumbled not upon a treasure chest, but upon something far more dangerous? A relic that perhaps should never have seen the light of day again. Over many centuries, the stone itself vanished. Some claim it was irrevocably lost, while others are inclined to believe it was completely destroyed. However, a few people continue to insist on its existence, convinced that it was hidden by someone who feared its potential threat. To this day, only sketches, detailed descriptions, and a tormenting premonition that this artifact held a message far more significant than mere gold have survived. If this slab was indeed authentic, then it defines Oak Island not as an ordinary site of pirate findings or trivial treasures, but as a repository of deeply encrypted intent. Someone centuries earlier not only concealed something valuable, but also left behind a complex system of symbols, a language intended exclusively for those who already possessed the key to its decipherment. And who in human history was most skilled in ciphers, in secret signs, in esoteric knowledge? The answer is immediate: the Knights Templar. They marked their churches with crosses that simultaneously served as guides. They sealed their secrets in symbols understood only by the initiated. Their unique legacy transformed and passed into Masonic lodges, into secret teachings extending across all continents. Could the Oak Island stone have been another, until now unknown, link in this hidden chain? The stone may have vanished, but its memory lives on. It tells us that what is hidden beneath the layers of earth on Oak Island was not a coincidence or an arbitrary act. On the contrary, it was a deliberate, meticulously encrypted message, intended to transmit a message across centuries. But to whom was it intended? To us, idle seekers and curious intruders, or to descendants, guardians, who are still awaiting the day when the veil of mystery will fall? Beneath the shifting earth of the island, stone symbols still echo, representing a language of vague hints and subtle shades. And perhaps in their silence, they tell us that the true value of Oak Island is not the buried artifacts, but the narrative itself, a mystery that refuses to fade. By the mid-19th century, the mystery of Oak Island had transcended local curiosity. It had become an all-consuming obsession. Every fruitless search, every cave-in, every flood only intensified the mystification. And with each new generation, a more persistent question arose. Who could have engineered such an intricate system of traps and underground passages many centuries before the first settlers even marked these shores on their geographical charts? Pirates, some posited, Captain Kidd or perhaps Blackbeard, renowned for stashing their loot in forgotten coves. However, the incredible sophistication of the Money Pit's construction sharply contrasted with the notion of hasty buccaneers. Pirates buried their riches shallowly, planning to retrieve them within years, not centuries. Oak Island's system represented a different category of structures. It was designed to safeguard an object for an indefinitely long period, capable of resisting not only the encroachments of looters, but also the destructive effects of centuries. And it is precisely why rumors began to point to the Knights Templar. The Templars, warrior monks of the 12th and 13th centuries, were more than just soldiers of Christ. They were virtuoso architects, skilled financiers, and outstanding engineers. They built impregnable citadels throughout the Holy Land, laid secret passages beneath Jerusalem, and created complex hydraulic structures that still puzzle modern researchers. If anyone possessed the art of creating secret, floodable channels beneath an isolated island, it was they. But why here? Why Nova Scotia, a land unknown to European cartographers in the Middle Ages? Or was it known after all? Some hypothesize that the Templars, fleeing persecution in 1307, directed their naval armada west from La Rochelle. Ships vanished from French harbors without a trace, and the contents of their cargo went unrecorded. Could they have crossed the Atlantic Ocean long before Columbus's voyages, transporting relics too dangerous to fall into the hands of monarchs or pontiffs? Let's consider the timeline of events. In 1307, King Philip IV of France initiated a campaign to liquidate the Templars, confiscating their immense treasures and declaring them apostates. In the blink of an eye, the most influential brotherhood in Christendom became exiles. However, neither their untold riches, nor their extensive archives, nor presumably their most sacred relics were ever found. If they transported these valuables on the aforementioned ships, the principle of conspiracy dictated that they be hidden in such a remote and inaccessible corner where no monarch's power could penetrate. And what about the fortifications of Oak Island? They evoke associations not with a pirate's cache, but with a citadel without visible defenses, with an ingenious trap created from earth and water, designed to protect some sacred value. Could this have been the last stronghold of the Templar Order, erected not for the defense of human lives, but for the preservation of a great secret? The evidence is circumstantial, but it is palpable in the air, like the scent of incense in the twilight of an ancient chapel. Stone carvings adorned with crosses, a lead object shaped like a Templar cross found in the earth centuries later, markings on massive stones resembling Masonic symbolism. None of this is irrefutable proof of the Templars' presence, and yet, collectively, they whisper of a continuity of esoteric knowledge. For the Freemasons themselves claimed a genealogical kinship with the traditions of the Templar Order. If later Freemasons were drawn to Oak Island, perhaps it was because they sensed that their predecessors had already been to this place. The Templar connection is not an undeniable fact, not etched in the annals. It is merely a vague hint, a hypothesis, a tantalizing probability that stirs the mind. But listen closely. In every echo of the Oak Island narrative, in every legend of hidden and guarded riches, the Templar echo resonates not as a reverberation of knights or financiers' deeds, but as the voice of guardians. Guardians who, perhaps, chose this remote shore as the ultimate sanctuary for the most sacred relics of Christendom. And if this is true, then Oak Island is not solely a treasure mystery. It is a mystery of beliefs, power, and a legacy the world was never meant to comprehend. The silence of the night of October 13th, 1307, was shattered by the echo of a coordinated strike, forever known in history as the day of the fall of the Templar order throughout France. By royal decree, the king's men swiftly stormed Templar commanderies, seizing their leaders and appropriating vast estates. Those who resisted were brutally beaten, bound, and unceremoniously led away. And those who confessed to heresy under torture were condemned to severe punishment. The once mighty order, which proudly called itself the protector of pilgrims and possessed untold wealth, was dissolved virtually overnight. However, not all knights were captured. Not all were doomed to burn. Historical chronicles attest that in the port city of La Rochelle, on the coast, the Templar fleet mysteriously disappeared. Some claim these ships were simply captured by the French crown. Others insist that the vessels managed to escape. Under the cover of pitch darkness, sails were raised, and the ships carried away the order's treasures. But the true treasure, perhaps, was not gold or precious stones. It could have been relics, sacred yet dangerous artifacts that could not be entrusted to either the church or the crown. Imagine these ships, cutting through the waves. Their hulls were burdened not only with cargo, but with a great purpose. Where did they go? Perhaps to Scotland, where sympathetic lords and exiled Templars could provide refuge. Or to Portugal, where the order quietly reformed under a new name, the Knights of Christ. And perhaps they went even further, beyond the known world, to a place where secrecy would be absolute and unwavering. If one assumes that the labyrinth of Oak Island was indeed created in the early 14th century, this aligns surprisingly well with the chronology of events. This could very well have been the work of exiled guardians, Templars, who decided to preserve what they carried, even if it meant burying these valuables beyond the reach of kings, popes, and even human memory itself. Notice the meticulousness with which the island's defenses were constructed. This was not hasty work. It required detailed planning, immense labor, and unwavering devotion. Creating such a vault would have taken years, perhaps even decades, and the iron discipline for which the Templars were known. These were not desperate men throwing coins into holes in the ground. These were true architects of secrecy, guardians who sincerely believed they served a higher purpose. And what exactly were they guarding so carefully? Some suggest ancient manuscripts, lost gospels telling a different story of Christ, texts too dangerous to be allowed to exist in Europe. Others whisper of relics, the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, or the treasures of Solomon's temple found during the Crusades. But there is one theory that sounds even darker. The Templars carried evidence of a bloodline, a lineage that could shatter the very foundations of church power if revealed. Whether relics, records, or revelations, their preservation was absolute and non-negotiable. To protect their burden, the Templars may have sacrificed their presence in history. Their names were slandered, their order destroyed, and the surviving knights scattered across the world. However, their secret, if Oak Island is indeed their work, has endured in silence beneath the earth and sea. The exiled guardians left no charter, no testimonies, no map that we know of. And yet, perhaps that was their original intention. For if the treasure they carried was dangerous enough to destroy an entire order, then perhaps it was too dangerous to be revealed to the world. And so the ship sailed into legend, and Oak Island whispers as their possible refuge, a place where exiled knights may have built not just a hiding place, but a true sanctuary, a tomb of secrets too great for the world above. The idea of medieval ships crossing the Atlantic might seem incredible, even fantastical. However, history leaves tantalizing clues suggesting it was entirely possible. The Templars, after all, were not only valiant warriors and mystics. They were experienced seafarers. Their fleet was one of the largest in Europe, and their dominance of the seas rivaled even the great trading republics of Venice and Genoa. From the ports of the Mediterranean to the harbors of the North Sea, their banners once flew proudly, and their vessels carried pilgrims, grain, and soldiers across vast stretches of water. And so we must ask, when the Templar fleet vanished from La Rochelle in 1307, could some of those ships have sailed west rather than east? The ocean, for medieval Europe, was a frontier that both inspired terror and promised possibilities. But even in those distant times, rumors circulated of lands beyond the sea. Norse sagas told of Vinland, a fertile shore across the Atlantic, where Leif Erikson and his companions had settled centuries earlier. Could the Templars have inherited fragments of these stories? Could sympathetic Normans, bound by trade or oath, have shared their knowledge with the exiled order? Imagine their journey, large cogs and caravels, sturdy and purposeful, gliding into the Atlantic night. They carried no banners, for secrecy was their reliable shield. Their holds, perhaps, were filled not with riches to spend, but with relics to hide. Relics the world was not yet ready to see. Guided by the stars, driven by desperate urgency, they crossed the boundless silence of the ocean, seeking a shore untouched by papal decree or royal edict. And when land appeared, Nova Scotia, with its countless coves and islands, it would have seemed an ideal refuge. Remote, isolated, shrouded in mist and pines, it was a place where a vault could be built, deep and hidden enough to last not years, but centuries. Some researchers point to intriguing cartographic evidence that emerged in European lands long before the era of Christopher Columbus. These ancient maps, like harbingers of future discoveries, show outlines of coastlines strikingly similar to the geography of North America, all during a period when the existence of such territories officially remained a deep secret. A legitimate question arises: how could such profound knowledge have existed if navigators had not yet reached these distant shores? Could the Knights Templar, escaping brutal persecution, have secretly carried such classified cartographic materials with them? In addition to ancient maps, researchers' attention is drawn to the very stones of Oak Island. Among them are massive boulders inscribed with unusual markings. Some strikingly resemble the distinctive crosses of the Templar order, while others appear to be navigational symbols, pointing the way. Are these mysterious signs merely whimsical creations of natural erosion, or do they represent tangible traces of a long-forgotten daring journey? Assuming that the Knights Templar did indeed make a transatlantic crossing, Oak Island could very well have been chosen by them as a secure vault, a kind of citadel created by nature itself from earth and water, where their valuable relics could find eternal rest. To accomplish this mission, they needed neither monumental castles nor numerous armies. Their true allies were silence, absolute secrecy, and, of course, relentless time. Thus, the transatlantic crossing was probably not a simple escape from persecution. It was quite possibly a carefully planned act of preservation, a conscious choice to hide something that conservative Europe would never have allowed to exist. And so, when one steps onto the shore of Oak Island, listening to the piercing cries of gulls and the monotonous lapping of waves against the rocky shore. One might catch distant echoes of that very journey, a journey that became an exile, but ended not at the abyss of despair, but in the discovery of a carefully hidden legacy, deeply buried in the earth's depths. Long before the historic moment when Christopher Columbus set sail in search of the New World, some ancient maps of the European continent already contained faint whispers of lands that officially should not have been known. These ancient cartographic scrolls, carefully tucked away in dusty monastic libraries or lost in trade archives, display curious coastlines whose outlines remarkably match fragments of North America. Moreover, they are dotted with strange, semi-encrypted annotations, giving the impression that their compilers drew their information from sources inaccessible to the general public. A striking example is a map attributed to the Venetian Zeno brothers in the 14th century. It describes in great detail sea voyages to the west, across waters that official historiography of the time unequivocally declared unexplored. Another notable example is the famous Peary Rice map, dated 1513, which depicts the contours of the American continents with astonishing accuracy. It seems as if it was compiled from sources much older than the era of Columbus itself. A reasonable question arises: how could such profound knowledge have existed if navigators had not yet reached these distant shores? Could the Knights Templar, escaping brutal persecution, have secretly carried such secret cartographic materials with them? The vast network of the Templar Order stretched across the entire European continent. Their numerous agents moved freely between bustling ports, royal courts, and secluded monasteries. These knights were not only warriors, but also skilled bankers, talented builders, and experienced navigators. Thus, if anyone had the opportunity to acquire forbidden knowledge about lands lying beyond the boundless expanses of the Atlantic Ocean, it was undoubtedly them. And if this hypothesis is correct, then the discovery of Oak Island was no accident. On the contrary, this island was chosen with deep intent and deliberation. In one's imagination, it's easy to picture a hidden map, its ink on ancient parchment already fading, passed from hand to hand with a mysterious whisper of trust. This was no ordinary map of kingdoms or bustling trade routes, but rather a detailed guide to secret sanctuaries, places where priceless relics could be safely hidden, secure from the greedy grasp of monarchs. Did the Templars mark Nova Scotia on such a map, with Oak Island as part of it, its countless bays perfectly suited for secrecy, and its remoteness guaranteeing absolute confidentiality? Some researchers suggest that Oak Island itself bears clear signs of a grand design, as if its natural landscape was intentionally transformed into a complex cipher. They point to stones arranged in strict geometric patterns, strikingly resembling ancient navigational symbols, as well as boulders precisely aligned with the cardinal directions, as if marking a ritual compass or landmark. To the uninitiated observer, these stones appear merely as chaotically scattered elements of the natural landscape. However, for those with special knowledge, they may serve as precise instructions, representing a silent map carved directly into the island's geological structure. Thus, the map holding these secrets likely does not exist on brittle parchment. Perhaps it is embodied in the island itself. Its ingeniously designed flood tunnels, its deeply hidden shafts, its mysteriously carved stones. Each of these elements is, in essence, an instruction, a sign intended to guide only those who possess a special key to the enigma. The rest, outside observers, remain in complete bewilderment, content with mere semi-legends and centuries of absolutely fruitless excavations. If such a map truly existed, whether as an ancient parchment or embodied in the island's geology itself, then Oak Island ceases to be a simple mystery born of chance. It appears as a chosen place, a carefully planned destination guided by esoteric knowledge, and as the endpoint of a great journey that began in distant lands, amidst the ashes of the fallen Templar order. And perhaps the most unsettling of all these hypotheses is the thought that this map may never have been lost. What if there are still those who carefully guard its key? Descendants of ancient guardians who know precisely what is hidden deep underground and understand just as precisely why it must remain invisible to the world. The island itself is silent, but it constantly points, directing one's gaze ever deeper into its depths. And by following these invisible lines, one delves further into a bottomless mystery that stretches across oceans and centuries, into the forbidden cartography of secrets never meant to be revealed. When the first news of Oak Island's legendary money pit reached people's ears, their imaginations immediately conjured images of untold riches, mountains of gold, chests overflowing with ancient coins, shimmering jewels scattered lavishly across stone floors. In short, pirate loot and the treasures of princes. However, as decades passed and the pit revealed only new layers of its impenetrable mystery, bringing to light flood tunnels, enigmatic stones, and engineering feats seemingly impossible for their time, a completely different question arose. What if the supposed treasure was not material wealth at all? What if it represented something far more sacred and possibly significantly more dangerous? Among these timid, whispered conjectures, two legendary relics stand out: the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant. In popular imagination, the Grail is traditionally depicted as a chalice, the very cup Jesus Christ raised during the Last Supper, and into which, according to tradition, his blood was collected during the crucifixion, endowing it with unearthly, eternal power. Legends claim that those who dare to drink from it will gain either immortality or wisdom beyond all human understanding. However, in other traditions, the Grail is interpreted not as a physical vessel, but as a powerful symbol, perhaps even a bloodline, a carefully preserved lineage, a secret that would be too dangerous for the official church to acknowledge. The Ark of the Covenant, according to sacred texts, is described as a magnificent gold-plated chest made of acacia wood, intended for the careful storage of the sacred tablets of the law given to Moses. Its mighty presence, the Bible states, was capable of unleashing plagues upon enemies and granting triumph to the Israelite people. Careless touching of it led to inevitable death. For centuries, scholars and tireless treasure seekers have relentlessly asked, what happened to this holy relic? Some hypothesize that it is in Ethiopia, while others believe it rests beneath the ancient ruins of Jerusalem. However, what if we assume that, lost amidst the turmoil of the Crusades, the Ark was entrusted to the Knights Templar, and then secretly transported across the seas to Oak Island? One only needs to recall the grandiose engineering marvels discovered beneath the money pit, the ingenious traps designed for flooding, the labyrinths of tunnels whose purpose was to collapse. All this constitutes an extremely complex and sophisticated system, clearly excessive for mundane riches. No mere treasure required such monumental protection. It was about preserving something sacred, something that could overturn the course of history for entire nations. If the Grail rests beneath Oak Island, then perhaps it is not the familiar cup, but a collection of records, ancient parchments carefully sealed in waterproof vessels, telling an undeniable truth capable of fundamentally changing the Christian worldview, irrefutable evidence of a sacred bloodline, or texts revealing a long-suppressed history. If it is the Ark of the Covenant, then the flood labyrinths were likely created not only for concealment, but also for secure containment, ensuring that its formidable presence never fell into careless hands. While traditions often exaggerate, Oak Island has, however, revealed a number of very unusual hints. Fragments of ancient parchment, coconut fibers whose origin is far beyond their natural habitat, and a lead cross that strikingly resembles Templar artifacts found in European lands. Each of these finds points not just to buried treasures, but to a purposeful act, implying the presence of relics carefully placed, diligently preserved, and securely protected. The Grail, the Ark. These are eternal symbols of divine intervention, esoteric knowledge, and vigilant guardianship. If even one of these treasures rests beneath Oak Island, then the shaft is not merely a puzzle, it becomes a crypt of power. And perhaps that is why it has so stubbornly resisted every attempt at disclosure. For some truths, once brought to light, can never again be consigned to oblivion. And so the question continues to hang in the air, like an unanswered plea. Is Oak Island the last refuge of Christendom's most revered relics? Or does it conceal something far more extraordinary, something for which human language has not yet found suitable words to name? As shovels, picks, and later powerful drilling rigs relentlessly tore into Oak Island's depths, not everything they brought to the surface was merely earth, wood, and water. Periodically, some very curious artifacts came to light. Tiny, scattered, yet incredibly enticing, as if the island itself deliberately offered only fleeting glimpses of its innermost secret, stubbornly refusing to fully reveal it. At an impressive depth of 90 feet, drilling rigs once brought up fragments of ancient parchment, unusually fragile, yellowed by the relentless passage of time, with barely discernible, faded traces of ink. The writings on them were too small and illegible to decipher, yet their very existence spoke volumes. Who would, centuries ago, so carefully bury manuscripts deep beneath earth and wood, unless the information they held was meant for absolute protection? Could these insignificant scraps be fragments of lost gospels, records of ancient genealogies, or perhaps texts so dangerous in content that they had no place in European libraries of that time? In another part of the mysterious shaft, researchers stumbled upon coconut fiber husks, completely uncharacteristic of the Nova Scotia region, yet laid in a dense, thick layer, like some kind of padding. Some experts suggested that these fibers were used for filtration in the flood tunnels, preventing silt from clogging the complex hydraulic system. But a legitimate question arises. Why import such an exotic material from such distant seas, unless the builders themselves were skilled seafarers with extensive connections in global trade? Was this not another silent whisper of the Knights Templar, whose sea routes stretched from the shores of the Levant to the expanses of the Atlantic, and whose secret networks entangled entire continents? In addition, iron objects were also found, corroded and rusted by time, their original forms almost completely lost due to the natural decay of the metal. Some researchers suggest these were tools left by early treasure seekers. Others insist on their much older origin, dating them to medieval implements, possibly directly related to the construction of the shaft itself. However, one discovery perhaps stirred the public imagination more than all the others. This refers to a small lead cross, found not in the depths of the money pit, but on the island's surface. Its outline strikingly resembles, almost identically, the Templar crosses skillfully carved on the walls of ancient chapels in France. Could this cross have been accidentally dropped by one of those exiled guardians centuries ago, as they secretly toiled to conceal their mysterious cargo? Skeptics, however, resolutely state that such artifacts in themselves prove little. The cross could well have belonged to later settlers on the island. The parchment could have ended up there due to careless storage and the fibers from ordinary ship cargo. And yet, if one tries to piece these disparate fragments together, they begin to form a pattern that feels less like a random coincidence and more like the edge of a magnificent tapestry, full of secrets, which we are not yet allowed to see in its entirety. Each artifact retrieved is like a faint whisper from the depths of past centuries, fragile and always incomplete. None of them, by themselves, are sufficient proof of the existence of great relics. None can alone fully unravel the centuries-old mystery. And perhaps it is precisely in this that the deepest meaning of what is happening lies. Oak Island allows only fleeting glimpses, never granting full certainty, as if invisibly reminding humanity that some mysteries, perhaps, should forever remain unsolved. Feeling the cold, heavy lead cross in one's palm, one is inevitably drawn into the depths of centuries. It's hard not to imagine a Templar knight, exiled and persecuted, pressing this symbol of faith to his chest in silent prayer before carefully lowering it into the earth. The question inevitably arises whether Oak Island's soil holds not just material values, but those very relics that once ignited the flame of religious fervor across Europe. These artifacts, though they may seem like mere fragments, serve as invitations. Each calls researchers deeper, urging them to continue excavations not only within the island's depths, but also within the depths of history itself. As more seekers and dreamers arrived on Oak Island, the mystery began to extend beyond mere soil and seawater. The question was no longer solely about engineering challenges, but also about symbols, strange markings carved in stone, etched on trees, and passed down in local whispers. Many began to suspect that Oak Island itself represented a cipher, a riddle written in earth and stone. Some early explorers reported boulders with curious markings, lines, and crosses carved into them. These marks seemed deliberate, though worn by centuries of wind and rain. Certain witnesses swore that, viewed from above, the stones formed distinct patterns, triangles, crosses, or compasses that echoed elements of sacred geometry, so beloved by the Knights Templar and their supposed successors, the Freemasons. And then came the legendary inscribed stone, recovered from the money pit at a depth of 90 feet. Its symbols were forever etched in people's memories, even if not preserved in pristine records. To this day, scholars and enthusiasts fiercely debate the meaning of these markings. Was it a warning, a guide, or a claim of ownership? Theories range from a primitive pirate's abbreviation to a complex Masonic code. Each interpretation seems plausible enough, but none can be definitively proven. Freemasons in particular found themselves especially drawn to this enigma. In the 19th century, many of those who financed and directed excavations on Oak Island were lodge members, men deeply immersed in allegory and secret symbols. For them, Oak Island was far more than just a treasure hunt. It was a true pilgrimage into the unknown, an echo of ancient rituals speaking of hidden knowledge and lost wisdom. Could it be that the reason Freemasons felt compelled to excavate here was that they recognized something familiar? Traces of their spiritual ancestors, the Templars. Some researchers adhere precisely to this viewpoint, for in the lodges and secret manuscripts, Masonic teaching often hints at the survival of Templar secrets long after the order's supposed destruction. If Oak Island indeed bore Templar markings, then it was not just another mystery. It was a continuation of sacred guardianship. Ciphers, of course, thrive on ambiguity. Each new theory begets the next. Each code invites yet another layer of speculation. Some claim that the arrangement of the island's features, the Money Pit, Smith's Cove, the triangular swamp, form a hidden diagram, a star map, or a compass rose pointing to something even grander. For others, these patterns are merely projections of wishful minds, imparting meaning where none originally existed. However, codes are powerful not because they are solved, but because they hint. They whisper that something lies beneath the surface, just out of reach. Oak Island thrives precisely on this hint. Its stones, its carvings, its hidden alignments, all beckon the imagination into a labyrinth of endless possibilities. And perhaps that was the original intention. Perhaps the builders wanted the uninitiated to get lost in countless interpretations, while only those who possessed the true key could unlock the coveted vault. For the rest of us, the island remains an unread manuscript, a book of secrets whose language is symbols and whose grammar is silence. To understand the deeper allure of Oak Island, one must once again return to the 14th century, to the moment when the Templar order was shattered by crown and church. Their downfall was not merely a political maneuver. It was a veritable firestorm of accusations, designed to erase them not only from power, but from memory itself. The accusations were damning: heresy, blasphemy, secret rituals. They were accused of spitting on the cross, of worshiping a mysterious head, of denying Christ himself. Many historians consider these fabrications tools of King Philip IV to justify seizing their vast wealth. However, the speed and ferocity of the persecution suggest something more. A fear that the Templars possessed knowledge too dangerous to be left unchecked. On that October night in 1307, hundreds of knights were dragged from their commanderies. Some were broken on the rack, their bodies stretched until bones cracked. Others were burned, their ashes scattered to the wind. Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master, was tied to a stake on the Ile de la Cité in Paris. Flames consumed him as he cried out a curse upon the Pope and the King. The smoke of his martyrdom still lingers in the legends of France. But the persecutions did not destroy them all. Many knights managed to escape, carrying with them the order's treasures, be they gold, precious relics, or forbidden truths. In Scotland, Portugal, and perhaps even across the Atlantic, the spirit of the Templars endured. Fire consumed their name, but not their immortal legacy. In this context, Oak Island appears as a vague silhouette, looming on the periphery of historical fire. For if one assumes that the Knights Templar did indeed transport their priceless sacred relics across the ocean, they would undoubtedly have needed a sanctuary located beyond the reach of papal decrees. The intricate traps that abound in the shaft, its carefully guarded mysteriousness, its stubborn unwillingness to reveal its secrets, all these aspects seem to eloquently testify to the desperate situation of those who witnessed the torture of their brethren and the betrayal of their deep faith. Their actions went beyond merely concealing untold riches. They sought to protect these valuables from the very powerful forces that once guided their order. One only needs to look closer at the astonishing resilience with which the island itself resists any attempts at intrusion. Every sudden flood, every unexpected collapse, every failure experienced by researchers is perceived not as a coincidence, but rather as part of some grand design. As if the great secret hidden there must remain in darkness until humanity is ready to accept it. Or perhaps it will never be revealed. The flames of persecution that raged in those days did not merely put an end to the existence of the ancient order. Like a powerful wind, they scattered its seeds across the boundless expanses of historical time, and perhaps, with only a degree of probability, one of these seeds found fertile ground and sprouted far beyond the Atlantic, where the majestic pine forests of Nova Scotia silently whispered over a deeply hidden vault, and the earth itself became a silent tomb for secrets too dangerous for the entire world that stretched above. In every subtle glimmer of Oak Island's mystique, there still echoes the reverberation of that fateful flame, ignited on the night of 1307, which, consuming mortal bodies, proved powerless against eternal truths. The smoke of those distant events has long dissipated into the air, yet a faint whisper remains. This whisper suggests that the island represents not merely an insoluble enigma related to the search for riches, but perhaps is the final testament of persecuted knights who chose deep secrecy over ignominious surrender. When it comes to the legendary Templars and their irrevocably lost treasure, most people involuntarily imagine untold gold deposits, chests literally overflowing with ancient coins, or jewels dazzlingly sparkling in the flickering torchlight. However, what if the true value they so zealously guarded was not material wealth at all, but a carefully concealed bloodline, an ancient lineage whose roots stretch back to the very origins of the Christian era? Some ancient traditions tell that the Knights Templar, while in Jerusalem, discovered something far more significant than mere sacred relics. Rumor has it that deep beneath the Temple Mount, they managed to find priceless manuscripts and esoteric secrets, carefully preserved since the time of Christ himself. Among these findings, it is quite possible, were records indicating a carefully hidden truth. Jesus had descendants, a bloodline that continued its existence in the strictest secrecy, guarded by the few who dared to challenge the unquestionable authority of the Church. If such knowledge truly existed, it would pose an unimaginable danger. Its revelation would mean a direct challenge to the very authority of the Roman Church, undermining the centuries-old dogma upon which its power rested. And so the Templars, quite likely, chose a different path, the path of guardianship. They became not just protectors of sacred relics, but vigilant guardians of this sacred bloodline, ensuring the survival of truth, even at the cost of their own demise. Within this narrative, Oak Island transforms, becoming something more than a mere repository. It becomes a true crypt for invaluable evidence, The flood tunnels, the ingenious traps, the mysterious symbols carved in stone, each of these elements is an insurmountable barrier, created not to protect gleaming gold, but to preserve precious memory. It is entirely possible that invaluable parchments were carefully sealed in oiled leather, their ancient inks recording detailed genealogies or gospels long ago excluded from official scripture. Perhaps other relics were placed alongside them, ancient chalices, sacred crosses, or even bones that, according to tradition, carried echoes of holy blood. The symbolism of the cross found on Oak Island, whose form strikingly resembles Templar relics found in Europe, involuntarily comes to mind. Was it dropped by pure chance, or was it left intentionally as a kind of pointer for future guardians? One should also recall the fragile, ink-stained fragments of parchment that were recovered from the legendary money pit. Were these merely scraps of long-forgotten testimonies, faint traces of words that were once destined to shake the very foundations of faith? If one assumes that the Templars indeed guarded such a significant bloodline, this circumstance could well explain the brutality of their persecution. The Church might have tolerated wealth, even power, but never a direct challenge to its spiritual monopoly. Moving such knowledge westward, concealing it beneath the layers of a remote island, would have been an act of both defiance and deepest devotion. And it is precisely why Oak Island whispers not only of untold treasures, but also of ancient origins, of provenance. It suggests that what lies within its depths is intended not for enrichment, but for a great revelation. This revelation, if brought to light, could irreversibly change the entire history of Christendom. Of course, we cannot grasp the full truth. The earth continues to hold its unyielding silence, and the sea vigilantly guards its secret channels. And yet, listening to the faint whispers of the island, one feels the full weight of this grand possibility. Perhaps beneath these many layers of oak and stone lies a story that humanity, perhaps, was never ready to perceive. A story of ancient bloodlines and sacred relics, carefully hidden by those knights who chose deep secrecy over ignominious surrender and chose guardianship instead of fleeting glory. For over 2 centuries, Oak Island has relentlessly tested everyone who dared to seek its deeply hidden secrets. Fortunes have been irrevocably spent, strong families shattered, and human lives tragically cut short. The island does not surrender easily, and it is precisely why a sinister legend of a curse attached to this place has arisen around it, demanding a truly terrible price. Local legend faintly whispers that before the treasure is finally found, exactly 7 people must die. Only then, when the terrible price is paid in blood, will the island perhaps deign to reveal its ancient secret. This chilling prophecy, like a ghost, has hovered in the minds of every generation that ventured to search for treasure. And indeed, deaths have occurred. People crushed by suddenly collapsing shafts, others drowned in suddenly surging torrents of seawater. One fell victim to poisonous gases seeping from the mysterious depths. Each such tragedy serves as a grim reminder that Oak Island does not forgive audacious intrusion. By some counts, 6 human lives have already been claimed by this place. If the ominous curse is true, then, by all accounts, 1 more person must die before the ancient vault finally yields. Is this so-called curse merely a folk legend, invented by weary diggers to excuse their countless misfortunes? Or does it represent something far deeper organically woven into the very essence of the island. Could the Knights Templar, or those enigmatic builders of the money pit, have linked their great secret not only to engineering calculations, but also to ancient rituals? Medieval minds were deeply immersed in the world of symbolism. Their faith was based on sacred numbers and blood-sealed oaths, designed to protect relics of unimaginable power. Did they not appeal to both the material stone and the invisible spirit? The number 7 itself, for example, is rich with meaning. 7 days of creation, 7 seals of the apocalypse, 7 virtues, 7 deadly sins. The requirement of 7 lives, therefore, could be more than mere superstition. It could well represent a symbolic covenant, a powerful safeguard that inextricably weaves faith with relentless fatality. Each new death, recorded in our time, is inscribed as another grim verse in this ominous litany. Families mourn, but the legend only gains strength, as if the island itself has an insatiable thirst. The curse, therefore, becomes an integral part of the island's defensive system, as effective as any ingenious flood tunnel. It serves as a warning, indicating that pursuing this mystery entails the risk of losing not only fortune, but also life itself. And so seekers come here with palpable hesitation, constantly looking over their shoulder at the shadow of this curse. And yet they continue to arrive, for the promise of a great revelation proves stronger than any fear. What relic could inspire such a huge sacrifice? What truth could demand such an exorbitant price? The curse of 7 lives hangs over the island like an omnipresent fog. Whether it is simple superstition or a meticulously planned design, it relentlessly reminds us that some mysteries are not freely revealed. They must be paid for with sweat, unbearable grief, and spilled blood. And until the 7th life is taken, or until this ancient legend is finally broken, the heart of Oak Island will remain sealed, waiting in deep silence beneath the earth and sea. Over the centuries, the Templars transformed into barely discernible shadows of history. Their name was cursed by kings, and their brethren scattered across the world. However, their whispers did not vanish without a trace. They found new refuges, new symbols, and new oaths, which were carried into the rituals of another secret brotherhood, the Freemasons. Freemasonry emerged in Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries. However, its traditions often delved much deeper into ancient times. Its rites contained hidden references to Solomon's temple, to secret knowledge, to the guardianship of truths too sacred for ordinary eyes. And among these enduring traditions, a persistent rumor circulated that the Freemasons were direct heirs to the Templar legacy. The parallels between the two orders are striking. Both revered sacred geometry and architecture. Both concealed deeper meanings in symbols, compasses, squares, crosses, and stars. Both spoke of initiation, strictest secrecy, and vigilant guardianship. For many, Freemasons were not mere imitators, but true inheritors, carefully preserving what the Templars had so meticulously hidden from the world. And so, when Freemasons became involved in the mystery of Oak Island, as was the case with several prominent excavators in the 19th century, it inevitably raised troubling questions. Did they sense something deeply familiar in the island's complex design? Did they recognize the traces of their spiritual ancestors, skillfully carved in stone and buried beneath centuries of earth? Even in modern times, Masonic ties to the island persist. The lead cross found on the island not only resembles Templar symbolism, but also clearly alludes to Masonic symbolism. The symbols carved on nearby stones strikingly resemble Masonic ciphers. Was it a mere coincidence that Freemasons so often found themselves in the island's orbit? Or was it an irresistible pull of a legacy far older than themselves, prompting them to unravel a mystery their predecessors had carefully buried? Some researchers suggest that Oak Island could even be a kind of Masonic temple, built not of conventional walls and towers, but of shafts, tunnels, and precise alignments. Its geometry, some claim, forms a map of sacred proportions, a hidden diagram designed to connect earth with heaven. To the uninitiated, it looks like complete chaos. But for those trained in the mysteries of Freemasonry, it can whisper deep meaning. If this assertion is true, then Oak Island is not just a place where treasures are hidden. It is a ritual landscape, an encrypted sanctuary where valuable relics rest beneath layers of symbols and sacrifices. Freemasons, consciously or unconsciously, may have followed a trail left by their predecessors, continuing an ancient guardianship that began with knights in white cloaks and red crosses. And so, the echo deepens. The Templars fell in the fire of the Inquisition, but their whispers carried into oaths and symbols. These echoes, in turn, found their way to Nova Scotia, where stone and water seemed to conspire to keep the secret sealed. Oak Island, then, is not just a mystery for treasure hunters. It is a peculiar bridge between two orders, linked across centuries by strict secrecy, sacred geometry, and the vigilant guardianship of truths never meant for public view. From above, Oak Island appears small and utterly unremarkable. It is merely a crescent of land clinging to the coast of Nova Scotia. However, many researchers believe that its very shape conceals a grand design, a hidden geometry that points to its buried secret. Researchers have meticulously traced lines between the Money Pit, Smith's Cove, the triangular swamp, and numerous scattered boulders across the island. When connected, these points seemingly form clear patterns, triangles, crosses, and even a star. Some claim that this geometry replicates the sacred proportions so beloved by the Templars, and later the Freemasons, a secret language of lines and angles intended to conceal holy truths. Among the many hypotheses concerning the mysterious island, one suggests that the landscape itself was created in the likeness of a giant compass rose. Its numerous arms, like arrows, were oriented towards specific terrestrial and celestial landmarks, pointing to hidden spots. At the same time, there is another perspective regarding the swamp, which for many years was considered an ordinary natural formation. Proponents of this theory argue that it is actually an artificial structure, and its distinct triangular shape is not accidental, but a purposeful symbol, perhaps referencing the concept of the Trinity. If such assumptions are correct, then Oak Island appears not merely as a stage where mysterious events unfold, but becomes an integral part of the mystery itself, its key element. It is known that in the era of medieval mysticism, sacred geometry held a central place. It was on its principles that the construction of magnificent cathedrals was based, their walls and architectural forms imbued with proportions that, it was believed then, reflected the divine order itself. Applying such a complex and well-thought-out design to a place intended to conceal a vault would have had a dual meaning. It would be both practical and deeply symbolic. Geometric patterns could serve as a kind of unspoken guide, directing future initiates to the hidden treasure. While to uninitiated outsiders, all this would seem merely a chaotic jumble of stones and featureless swamps. Furthermore, it is worth noting the alleged alignments that, according to some researchers, connect Oak Island to distant corners of the planet. If imaginary lines are drawn on maps, they surprisingly connect this island with such iconic places as Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, sacred Jerusalem, and even the mysterious Rennes-le-Château in France. Each of these places is shrouded in an aura of mystery, and each, according to numerous traditions, is inextricably linked to the legendary Order of the Templars. A legitimate question arises: are these striking coincidences merely chance, a figment of imagination, or do they represent faint traces of a global network of sacred sites, meticulously mapped through complex geometry that remains invisible to most people? Naturally, skeptical minds tend to dismiss such patterns, considering them mere projections of the human consciousness, a human tendency to find shapes and regularities where none truly exist. However, for those who acted as guardians of ancient relics, geometry represented something far more than just a branch of mathematics. It was a sacred ritual. Concealing a secret within such a carefully considered geometric design meant, in their belief, weaving it into the very fabric of creation, thereby securing the consent of earth, sea, and sky for its vigilant protection. Thus, Oak Island may not merely be a place for a hidden cache, but an artfully created symbol, a geometric covenant skillfully carved into the landscape itself. Its numerous pits and intricate tunnels may form the body of this grand enigma, while the island's true shape, its precise alignments, and internal proportions constitute its soul. If this hypothesis is correct, then the key to solving Oak Island lies not in digging deeper into the earth, but in looking wider, stepping back, carefully tracing the faint lines, and comprehending the hidden geometry that unites all elements. And perhaps it is then that one begins to see not just an island, but an entire message, skillfully encrypted in earth and stone, patiently awaiting the one who possesses the knowledge to read it. For many centuries, countless treasure hunters invariably focused their primary attention on the legendary Money Pit, considering it the epicenter of all mysteries. However, one of the most intriguing and curious features of Oak Island is located elsewhere. It is its mysterious swamp. To the ordinary casual observer, it appears as a simple natural depression, a marshy triangle where reeds grow profusely and water stands still. But an increasing number of researchers are coming to believe that this swamp is not the result of random natural processes. Its distinct triangular shape causes particular astonishment, seeming almost too deliberate to be natural. Some authoritative researchers hypothesize that in the distant past, this place was an open waterway, a channel that effectively divided the island into two separate parts. Over time, they believe, this channel was deliberately filled in. Perhaps this was done to mask some activity, or more likely, to create a powerful symbol. Was it intentionally shaped to visually reflect the concept of the Holy Trinity? Or perhaps its form was meant to mirror the Masonic triangle. If these assumptions are correct, the swamp ceases to be a mere coincidence, transforming into a kind of signature left by its creators. Numerous strange finds only deepen the already complex enigma of this place. Beneath a thick layer of mud, divers reported the presence of wooden structures, logs arranged with such astonishing precision that nature rarely demonstrates. During one expedition, fragments of a platform were discovered, suggesting purposeful human activity in this area in ancient times. Another expedition revealed stones forming something that strongly resembled a paved surface, buried under centuries of accumulated silt. Why would anyone need to erect complex structures in the middle of a swamp, unless their goal was to conceal something extremely important within it? Additionally, there are stories of coconut fibers found here, identical to those discovered near the money pit. And again, we encounter a material completely uncharacteristic of Nova Scotia's flora, clearly brought from distant overseas lands. Were these fibers used for filtration, as packing material, or were they part of some grand design intended to link the swamp and the pit into a single system? Some researchers put forth a bold hypothesis that the swamp itself hides the wreckage of a ship in its depths. Perhaps the very vessel that once transported priceless relics across the Atlantic Ocean was deliberately scuttled and buried here, its timbers remaining hidden beneath layers of mud and water to this day. If this theory proves true, the swamp may turn out to be not just part of a complex puzzle, but its very source, the final resting place of the ancient guardian's own Ark of Exile. Viewed from a bird's-eye perspective, the triangular shape of the swamp acquires an almost unsettling symmetry, as if it was specifically created to be seen from above. Thus, it transforms not only into an element intended for concealment, but also into a means of communication, a kind of geometric beacon pointing the way to those who possess the knowledge of what to look for. And so the swamp continues to whisper its riddles, its reeds concealing ancient secrets, its murky waters holding silence, and its viscous mud, it seems, clinging to every potential answer. Is it a creation of nature or an artificial structure? Does it represent a burial ground for ships and priceless relics? Or is it a sacred symbol, skillfully carved into the very body of the island? No one can say for sure. However, many researchers conclude that it is the swamp, not the famous money pit, that may hold the true key to unraveling Oak Island's centuries-old mystery. Like all other parts of the island, the swamp stubbornly resists full disclosure of its secrets, offering inquisitive minds only fragments of hints and scattered pieces of information. But for those who cherish dreams of ancient relics once hidden by knights in exile, the swamp appears not as an ordinary bog. It is a carefully crafted veil, an artfully constructed mystery, a grand enigma that, despite its obviousness, remains unsolved. As rumors surrounding the mystery of Oak Island multiplied in the 19th century, some observers began to view its secrets not only through the prism of the Knights Templar, but also through another brotherhood, dwelling in the shadows, the Rosicrucians. This mysterious order, heavily veiled in myth, emerged on the European continent, bringing with it promises of esoteric wisdom, the art of alchemy, and occult truths. And like the Templars who preceded them, their own history was thoroughly permeated with a veil of secrecy and whispers of forbidden knowledge. The Rosicrucians claimed their origin was linked to an invisible college, a community of enlightened guardians who preserved sacred truths, using symbols and complex codes to do so. Their manifestos spoke of a comprehensive transformation of man, society, and spirit through a hidden science, accessible only to initiated members of their circle. To some, they appeared as mystics and profound philosophers. To others, they were direct heirs to the Templar tradition, tirelessly continuing the guardianship of ancient relics and bloodlines. It is no wonder that inquisitive researchers gradually began to discern their invisible shadows on Oak Island. Symbols found on stones and carved on trees strikingly resembled Rosicrucian emblems. Some even claimed that the island itself, with its characteristic geometry of triangles and crosses, reflected diagrams found in Rosicrucian texts, a kind of cosmic map intended to guide seekers to divine truth. Could the Rosicrucians have been drawn to Oak Island centuries after the Templars left it? Perhaps they recognized it as a sacred place, serving as a repository for hidden relics. Or perhaps, as some are inclined to suggest, they themselves inherited this mission of guardianship. From this perspective, Oak Island was not abandoned after the fall of the Templars at all. It remained an integral part of a continuous chain of secrecy, passed from one order to another, each taking a solemn oath of silence, and each adding new layers of symbols and riddles to its meticulous concealment. The Rosicrucians, as traditions asserted, operated invisibly, their members remaining unknown and their works hidden in plain sight. This remarkably echoes how Oak Island stubbornly refuses to reveal its secrets. To dig here is to chase fleeting shadows, to see only fragments, but never to grasp the whole. This is the very essence of the Rosicrucian mystery, a truth that exists but invariably remains hidden. Some even suggest that Oak Island itself could have been a kind of Rosicrucian temple. Its features are arranged like an alchemical diagram. The shaft, the swamp, the various alignments, all could have been parts of a carefully designed ritual landscape, intended to guide not the body, but the spirit. From this perspective, the treasure here is not material at all, but represents enlightenment, a sacred secret intended exclusively for those who can read the signs. And yet treasure hunters continue their excavations, seeking gold where perhaps there is none at all. The Rosicrucians would undoubtedly smile at this irony, for their greatest lesson was that true riches are hidden not in the earth, but in the depths of the soul. Nevertheless, the parallels remain striking: secrecy, symbols, geometry. Each new layer discovered on Oak Island only deepens the suspicion that the island was not a random cache, but a deliberate sanctuary. Its guardianship was passed down through orders of silence and shadows, preserving its enigmatic nature. Whether it is the Templars, the Rosicrucians, or their combined legacy, it continues to live on. And Oak Island, silently resting beneath the shade of its trees and the influence of the tides, may very well serve as the repository of their greatest secret. Throughout human history, whenever whispers of forbidden truths began to spread, powerful forces immediately rose to silence them. The Templars were accused of heresy not only because of their immense wealth, but also because of what they might have known. The Rosicrucians were dismissed as fabrications, their manifestos forbidden and burned. Even the Freemasons, centuries later, faced persecution from the church and crown. The same unchanging pattern always repeats. Knowledge that threatens existing power must be buried. If Oak Island truly conceals relics or records, it is no surprise that such a vault was hidden far beyond the reach of kings and popes. Imagine parchments, carefully sealed in oiled leather, recounting a genealogy the church could never accept, or texts directly contradicting sacred scripture. Imagine relics, the Grail, the Ark, or bones said to carry holy blood, whose very existence could overturn centuries of established dogma. Such knowledge, if revealed in medieval Europe, would have torn Christendom apart. The papacy, already fragile, might have crumbled under the weight of a truth too immense to deny. Kingdoms built on divine right would have been shaken to their foundations if their bases proved false. And so those who possessed this knowledge had no choice but to hide it, not out of greed, but out of extreme necessity. However, suppression does not erase truth completely. It merely drives it into the shadows, where it lingers like a ghost. And Oak Island, with its many layers of concealment, may well be the ultimate act of such suppression. It is a vault built not to enrich its creators, but to silence their potential revelation. Consider how the island itself resists any intrusion. Every trap, every collapse, every tragedy seems less like an accident and more like a deliberate design, as if the secret hidden there must remain in the shadows until the world is ready for it, or perhaps never ready at all. The suppression of knowledge has always come at a high price. The Templars paid with their lives. The Rosicrucians vanished into obscurity, their legacy becoming almost legend. The Freemasons endured centuries of suspicion and persecution. Each carried within them the whisper of something greater, something forbidden. And perhaps all of them, in their own way, were guardians of the same legacy, ensuring that the mystery of Oak Island would remain in silence for centuries. One must ask what the fate of the world would be if such knowledge came to light. Would it illuminate humanity's path to new heights, or bring about its downfall? Would it be a source of universal agreement, or plunge the world into chaos? Likely, those who constructed this mysterious vault grappled with the same dilemmas. Perhaps these profound contemplations led them to choose the path of concealment over public disclosure, preferring silence to loud declarations. Thus, Oak Island appears before us not merely as a geographical feature, but as a profound symbol and a serious warning. It serves as a constant reminder that there are truths whose power is so immense that they must be guarded from prying eyes. The reason for their concealment lies not in their falsehood, but precisely in their extreme danger, which makes them unbearable to utter and potentially destructive to the world. If the assumption that Oak Island truly holds an artifact of colossal power is correct, it is logical to conclude that such a relic was never left unguarded. For many centuries, traversing boundless oceans, there may have existed guardians, individuals whose devotion was driven not by a desire for glory or public recognition, but by an unbreakable oath of silence. Certain traditions tell of Knights Templar who did not perish in the fires of persecution, but chose to retreat into the shadows, carrying with them a sacred mission of guardianship. They became wanderers, abandoning their recognizable white cloaks and concealing their crosses. Nevertheless, in deep secrecy, their vows remained unshakable. Their duty extended not to earthly kings or Roman popes, but solely to the relic they guarded and to the higher truth it embodied. Perhaps they themselves set foot on Oak Island, building the vault with their own hands, skillfully weaving their distinctive symbols into the stonework, and creating ingenious traps integrated into the very structure of the earth and the rhythm of the tides. Or equally likely, they might have entrusted this monumental task to their loyal allies, skilled sailors, adept Freemasons, or enigmatic mystics, leaving behind only a map of symbols, readable only by members of their brotherhood. In subsequent centuries, faint whispers emerged, suggesting that guardians may have continued their unseen activities. Local farmers recounted sightings of unfamiliar figures on the island, glimpsed only briefly among the dense foliage of the trees, before vanishing without a trace. Early treasure seekers passed down stories of being constantly watched, as if invisible eyes relentlessly followed their every move. Were these tales merely products of imagination, or did they represent echoes of an ancient lineage of protectors, vigilantly ensuring that the secret remained untouched? The very idea of guardianship is not unprecedented. Throughout human history, many sacred relics were preserved not in impregnable fortresses, but in deep silence, protected by entire bloodlines sworn to secrecy. These mysteries were passed down from generation to generation, from father to son, from master to initiated apprentice. If the guardians of Oak Island truly exist, their path is likely not much different from this ancient pattern. It is entirely possible that these guardians still subtly exist among us, their legacy unspoken and their mission unchanged. The very silence in which they dwell may serve as the most reliable form of protection. To utter a word would be to commit betrayal. To reveal the secret would be to devalue centuries of sacrifices made for its preservation. That is why the guardians remain invisible. Their presence is felt only in how the island itself stubbornly refuses to yield to persistent attempts at penetration, as if unseen hands continue to protect its innermost heart. If this hypothesis is true, then Oak Island is not an abandoned place. It is not forgotten. It is under vigilant guard, preserved not by locks or fortress walls, but by the profound silence of those who still hold their sacred oath in memory. And consequently, an urgent question arises before us. When modern seekers delve into the Earth's depths, trying to uncover the mystery, are they challenging only the elements, earth and water? Or do their actions represent a daring challenge to an ancient brotherhood that has existed unnoticed for 7 centuries? Are they challenging those very guardians who still silently tread the earth, ensuring the preservation of Oak Island's mystery precisely where it was originally hidden? With the relentless passage of centuries and the rapid advancement of technological progress, the enigma of Oak Island has not only failed to fade, but on the contrary, has gained even greater strength. By the 19th century, organized syndicates had formed, whose goal was to deepen the search within the so-called money pit. To this end, they actively utilized advanced means for the time: powerful steam pumps, efficient drills, and subsequently even explosives like dynamite. Nevertheless, every effort undertaken seemed invariably to meet the same fate: incessant floods, sudden collapses, and deep disappointments, as if the island itself maliciously mocked human ambitions. Drilling rigs, penetrating the depths, brought unusual samples to the surface. Fragments of metal, pieces of chains, and, most intriguingly, tiny pieces of parchment on which faint traces of ink were barely visible. These finds did not resemble mere pirate treasures. Rather, they represented subtle hints of something carefully concealed, something written, recorded, and diligently preserved. In particular, the parchment suggested the presence of archives rather than gold deposits. Perhaps these were ancient records, telling of noble genealogies or sacred relics whose nature was so dangerous that they could not be kept in Europe. In the 20th century, completely new technological advancements came into play. Seekers used sonar, conducted complex geophysical surveys, and even lowered specialized cameras into deep boreholes, The resulting images were unsettling and stirred the imagination. They showed glimpses of something resembling wooden beams, as well as voids similar to artificial chambers. Moreover, some researchers swore they saw objects clearly resembling chests. However, the impenetrable darkness of the underground world never yielded definitive certainty. Every clue discovered was only fragmentary, as if the island itself deliberately allowed just enough to be revealed to sustain the undying interest of seekers and encourage them to further attempts. Smith's Cove, in turn, also revealed engineering solutions that significantly surpassed all contemporary expectations. Stone drainage systems, branching out like human fingers, were designed to direct seawater directly into specially created flood tunnels. The construction of such a complex system required not only outstanding engineering skills, but also a clearly expressed intention, serving as irrefutable proof that the builders were not ordinary people. They sought to make their vault absolutely impregnable, relying not on brute force, but on the genius of their design and the cunning of their engineering solutions. And above all this, a sinister curse still lingered. The death toll continued to rise. Financiers who invested their money in the search went bankrupt. Families broke apart under the unbearable burden of all-consuming obsession with the island's mystery. Every new expedition, it seemed, exacted its terrible price not only in coin, but also in human blood. The legend of 7 deaths, necessary to unravel the mystery, continued to be whispered, and its ominous tally inexorably approached its completion. Even in the 21st century, this enigmatic island continues its stubborn resistance. Powerful excavators, equipped with modern drills and other heavy machinery, encounter the same insurmountable obstacles as their predecessors many decades ago. Tunnels laid with immense effort suddenly collapse, shafts instantly fill with water, and detailed scans reveal only inexplicable ghostly anomalies that never reveal anything but mysterious shadows, escape and understanding. And yet, despite all these setbacks, the island's captivating allure does not diminish, but only intensifies. For every failed excavation attempt, some ancient fragment of parchment is found. Every sudden collapse is followed by a fleeting but hopeful glimpse of mysterious metal. And in the place of every ruined structure, a lead cross is discovered, carefully retrieved from the deep soil. Each such artifact, each find, rekindles the long-standing promise that something truly extraordinary rests deep underground, something capable of changing perceptions of the past. The island does not surrender completely. It does not reveal its secrets all at once. Instead, it merely hints subtly, whispers faintly, relentlessly luring generation after generation into its complex and convoluted labyrinth of mysteries. Modern archaeological endeavors are merely the latest chapter in its centuries-old history, which may not find its conclusion until the island itself decides, by its unknown will, to release what it has so diligently and long guarded. With each new, unsuccessful excavation, with each tiny fragment carefully extracted from the viscous mud and salty seawater, the mystery of Oak Island only deepens and becomes ever more intriguing. And as this mystery grows deeper and more complex, numerous theories multiply, like branches on a mighty tree, each striving to reach the very heart of the island, where, it is presumed, the main enigma lies hidden. Some researchers with unwavering certainty adhere to the hypothesis of the island's connection to the Knights Templar. For them, the complex geometry of the discovered objects, the cross strikingly similar to an ancient relic, and the found fragments of parchment, all point to the medieval origin of the mysteries. They see Oak Island as a secure refuge for loyal knights, a carefully hidden vault designed to protect the priceless relics of Christendom from the encroachments of the Pope and King of that time. Others believe that the origins of this mystery go much deeper, predating even the Templar era. They speak of ancient seafarers, perhaps Phoenicians, who they believe crossed the Atlantic Ocean long before Columbus's famous voyage, leaving behind engineering structures that seem too advanced for their historical period. From this perspective, Oak Island is not a medieval vault, but something far more ancient, and its treasure is inextricably linked to forgotten empires and long-vanished civilizations. There are also those who suggest a more prosaic, earthly origin, that the shaft was built by Spanish sailors who hid plundered gold there, or by British engineers who concealed military chests. However, the exceptional complexity of the discovered tunnels, as well as the grandiose scale of the entire flooding system, make such explanations seem insignificant and superficial compared to the immense weight and depth of the true mystery surrounding the island. Some researchers turn to ancient legends and myths. They see Oak Island not just as a repository of gold, but rather as a stone library, a place where manuscripts of forbidden gospels, ancient genealogies, or even maps of other sacred sites were sealed. In this light, the island's treasure is not material wealth, but invaluable knowledge, waiting for its time to change all known human history. Some go even further in their assumptions. They whisper of the Ark of the Covenant, its golden chest, which, they believe, rests deep in the soil of Nova Scotia, its divine power dormant beneath layers of oak and clay. Others speak of the Holy Grail, imagining it not as an ordinary cup, but as a bloodline, a truth encoded in ancient parchment and preserved in the strictest secrecy for centuries. Each of these numerous theories, like a mirror, reflects the aspirations and desires of its era. Gold attracted pirates, relics, mystics, and knowledge, seekers of truth. Oak Island becomes a peculiar mirror reflecting the hopes and fears of all who approach its shores. And perhaps this is precisely why the island's mystery persists, because it offers not a single answer, but 1,000, and each seems as compelling and plausible as the last. And yet, ultimately, the island itself remains silent and still. It neither confirms nor denies any of these theories. It simply observes as century after century, people project their boldest dreams and fantasies onto its ancient soil. Theories multiply and grow, but the truth remains deeply buried, awaiting its time in the shadows, beyond the reach of human understanding. If Oak Island truly holds a treasure, perhaps it is not what the world is ready to see and accept. For the relics most often whispered about are not gold or jewels, but objects associated with a sacred, immeasurable power. These are relics that could shatter established faith, overthrow entire kingdoms, and completely rewrite the very history of humanity as we know it. The Ark of the Covenant is one such powerful relic, which, according to tradition, contains the tablets of the law. It was described as a sacred vessel of divine presence and, at the same time, as a weapon of terrifying, destructive power. If the Templars indeed found it beneath the Temple Mount, as legend tells, they would have been forced to guard it with their lives, protecting it from any threat, Could Oak Island be the Ark's last secure resting place, sealed in a secret chamber, protected from the outside world by sea and stone? Then there is the Holy Grail, often depicted as a common cup, but in other ancient traditions described as a vessel of blood. Some claim it was not an object at all, but a bloodline, a living legacy of Christ, his descendants. If records or relics of this truth were carefully hidden, Oak Island would be the ideal refuge, beyond the reach of Rome, beyond the power of kings. Others whisper of sacred manuscripts, lost gospels, apocryphal texts, ancient genealogies, erased from official scriptures. Fragments of parchment recovered from boreholes only fuel such bold speculations and conjectures. Could these have been scraps of a much larger archive, written proof of truths that were too dangerous for medieval Europe? Still others imagine ancient bones, perhaps even the remains of revered or, conversely, despised figures, relics of saints, or perhaps relics of a far more significant, influential figure. Such discoveries would not bring wealth, but could cause chaos and destabilization. To possess them would be to possess colossal power, capable of changing faith and worldview itself. Perhaps this is why the island's vault remains sealed. The relics are forbidden not because they are false, but because their truth is too heavy and destructive. The Church could not allow them to come to light. And perhaps the world is not ready for this truth even now. Thus, Oak Island guards its secrets in silence. Its ingenious traps, centuries-old curse, and profound silence serve not merely as an obstacle to uninvited plunderers, but as a reliable veil, concealing something far more significant, a grand revelation. Attempts to excavate this place mean not only a desire to find untold riches, but also a daring challenge to fate, fraught with the risk of unearthing truths that have been buried for many centuries. The hidden relics continue to reside in deep shadow, their mysterious whispers barely audible through the rustling wind and the lapping of sea waves. And no matter what they represent, the legendary Ark of the Covenant, the sacred Grail, long-lost Gospels, or something entirely different, much more enigmatic, one fact remains constant. If these artifacts are ever brought to the surface and presented to the world, humanity's accustomed reality will undoubtedly undergo irreversible changes, never returning to its former state. For countless centuries, Oak Island has maintained its fundamental essence, remaining unyielding. Ancient trees continue to sway in the wind. Ocean tides regularly rise and fall, and powerful storms relentlessly batter its shores, leaving their marks. However, despite all these external changes and natural cataclysms, deep beneath layers of soil and stone, an unsolved mystery stubbornly persists, awaiting its moment. Numerous excavation shafts and advanced modern drilling rigs have repeatedly pierced its superficial skin, but have yet to reach its true heart. The island continues to hold its silence, remaining an all-encompassing enigma that stubbornly refuses to yield to a final resolution. Perhaps this is its true nature, not to be a treasure to be seized and appropriated, but to serve as an eternal mystery for humanity to constantly ponder, stimulating the minds of generations. The legendary money pit, the mysterious swamp, the enigmatic geometry of artfully placed stones, and the numerous scattered artifacts, all these are merely individual fragments, never coalescing into a single, complete picture. Each new clue draws researchers in, beckoning them forward, but then the earth closes again, as if an invisible force reminds them that some truths are not given to man easily. They can only be relentlessly pursued, without a guarantee of final disclosure. Thus, Oak Island has transformed, becoming something far greater than just a geographical point on a map. It has become a peculiar mirror, reflecting profound human aspirations and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. People seek here not only mythical gold or ancient relics, but also the very hidden meaning of existence, irrefutable proof that humanity's centuries-old history still reliably guards its innermost secrets, and that the current age of comprehensive knowledge has yet to conquer absolutely all the riddles of the universe. The island seems to whisper invisibly, asserting that the past never disappears without a trace, that beneath every new layer of soil lies another untold story, patiently awaiting its time to be told. And this is how the legends of the mysterious Templars continue to live and stir minds. There is a hypothesis that the exiled knights might have transported priceless relics across turbulent seas, securely sealing them in a carefully hidden vault, skillfully constructed from sturdy oak and dense clay. There is also the possibility that the mysterious Rosicrucians or powerful Freemasons continued this relay of guardianship, adding new layers of symbols and even greater secrecy to the already existing enigma. Or perhaps the island's mystery itself is rooted in a much deeper antiquity, connected with long-vanished civilizations whose names are no longer spoken aloud. Each of these possibilities seems incredibly convincing. None can be unequivocally proven, but perhaps this is the very meaning of Oak Island's existence. It exists not because its enigma has been fully solved, but precisely because it still remains unresolved. Its deep silence is its true strength, and its relentless resistance to attempts at disclosure is the main reason why it continues to fascinate and captivate human minds for so many centuries. When evening falls and you close your eyes, try to imagine this island shimmering under the starry sky. Its mysterious swamp gleams in the moonlight, and mighty pines emit a faint whisper in the wind. Beneath all this seemingly calm surface lies a secret that has remained untouched for many centuries, patiently awaiting its time in impenetrable darkness. Whether it is untold treasure, an ancient relic, or a grand revelation, perhaps humanity may never know the truth. And yet, this alluring mystery relentlessly calls us forward, passing through generations, crossing boundless oceans, and penetrating the deepest dreams. Oak Island continues to beckon with its promise that history still conceals countless wonders and unsolved riddles. Perhaps someday, this mysterious vault will indeed open, or perhaps it is destined to remain sealed forever, existing as an endless, insoluble mystery. Until then, the enigmatic whispers will continue, and Oak Island will sleep peacefully, vigilantly guarding its innermost secret beneath the watchful tide of the sea.